say this thing that, what got you here won't get us where we're going. And if you see in the video, it's defined by different moments and times and different movements where people have advocated for change because they felt like somebody's voice wasn't being heard, somebody's presence wasn't being elevated, right? And somebody wasn't being valued or treasured. And so they said, you know what, we got to do something different. And they advocated for it. And so we're at this point that this session, when we talk about equity, the whole thing is, you know what, we want to do something different. And we want to acknowledge that, you know what, I got to do something I've never done before if I'm going to get somewhere that I've never seen. Right. And Veronica Bear said, the time is now, the time is still now. Right. And so, how do we begin to do that? Right. How do we begin to hold that? And I'll share the slides with you all, and it'll be directly linked in there so you can share it with others for those of you that enjoyed the video. And so one of the things that's important is I just want to talk about and just share with you all for a moment. Because most of the time when people say, you know what, when we think about mental health in schools, we automatically go to what? School counselors and school social workers, right? That's the first people that we begin to think about is like, who are my counselors and where are my social workers, right? Where are my adjustment counselors? Where are my counselors and school social workers? And I just want to give you all a little bit about the history of that position so you can understand, one, how people see you and view you and why when you're dealing with intergenerational households, right? And so what does that mean? And so I tell everyone that, you know what, the purpose of a school counselor initially was just to decrease a child being maladjusted to school. So we have a child that's not able to do what they're supposed to do in school, then we need a counselor to go help them and to help their family, right? So it started, the whole purpose was, you know what, how do I improve attendance and strengthen home connection, right? And so there were visiting teachers, then there was this casework model. And then, we had the mental hygiene. So how do I help you be still? How do I help you be present? All the things that mental hygiene, when we think about what's good mental hygiene. And then we shifted and came into education reform. One of the things is really important, and I want you all to hold on to this, that the purpose of the council was to decrease maladjustment. Now, look, this is what it looked like. These were cartoons for it. I'm a visiting teacher, the first counselor. And it says, when home is indifferent, the child doesn't do what they want to. They don't do what's in the best of the child interests, right? And so you can see how initially it becomes a thing that was very blaming, right? And so they want to leave school. They don't want to be there. How do we get home cooperation? This idea of personality adjustments came out of that mental hygiene movement, right? And so as it continued, one of the things I asked myself is, are we still looking at families in the same way that they need to make adjustments, not that we need to think about how can we partner with them differently, right? And so I pulled some articles and we're still saying some parents just don't care, not acknowledging people care when they can, right? And so what is their capacity? How has their capacity been diminished? And so I share this, and I'm doing all this to say is because one of the things that's really hard when we think about mental health, when we think about school, is that in offering help, many people see the roles of a counselor, the roles of a social worker as threatening because you're coming in to tell me what I've done wrong. I hear your voice on the phone and I don't expect to hear anything good about my kid or myself. And so how do we begin to shift that narrative if we really want to think about equity and the parents that get those calls? A lot of times the kids that have problems in schools are coming from parents that have problems adjusting and being a part and feeling connected with school. And so how do we begin to acknowledge that? And so one of the things that I want to show you all, and as I show this to you, I want you to write down what stands out for you in this video. What are going to be things that you feel challenged by? And how does it affect your role? And we're going to unmute and we're going to talk about it. Because this is an opportunity. It just talks about it's an idea, a broad concept about a race. And we're all a part of it. And what does it mean when the race is not we're not all running the same race. And I pulled this up because I was thinking about track, and we just finished and watched a bunch of tracks at the Olympics. And so for me, I wanted to show this example so we can begin to open the door to have this conversation about what does it really mean to address mental health and equity. All right. All right, so I'm just curious. Feel free to unmute. I would love to hear your thoughts after watching that. Unmute or place them in the chat for me. You all are so quiet. Is there someone that's going to speak? Tara's like, Tara said it went with her history video. Yes. Of what it's like in this country. Others. Yes. Just unmute.
I think the video really did a nice job at sort of outlining the multiple areas of inequality, and that it really, for me, many of them I was very aware of, but there were a couple I was like, yeah, that's right. I got to be reminded of that. And, I love this video because I think it really helps to bring to the forefront of everybody's thinking the multiple areas where inequalities exist.
Thank you. It does. And I think for me, it's also sometimes we don't think about what people face to get where they are, right? We're like, just come to school and learn. But how many of us actually think about, you know what? What do each kid faces something different on their way to us, right? Um, and some of it's positive and some of it's really hard. And even as we think about adults entering the building, the same thing. Some of the adults that are coming in will experience something that's much harder than others as we enter into our buildings and we begin to work together. And for me, it's an opportunity to really ask ourselves, how do we extend grace? Right? How do we extend grace across the standpoint? And grace means, how do we honor what people have been able to accomplish versus trying to push them to meet a bar and we don't know what it's going to take for them to get all the way there? How do we help them get there versus criticizing them for not getting there, right? So the next thing that we're going to talk about, if I can get my slides to ponder, is I want you all to just think about, I want to show you all the definition that we have here. And this definition, it just says, you know what, if I'm going to create an equity goal, right? And I'm going to say that that's a goal. A lot of people would be like, oh, we need to eliminate the gap, but that's not the focus of an equity goal, right? But the goal is to actually increase the success for all students, right? So we want to actually say, how can we make certain and increase that there will be success for all of our students? And so what you'll see in this diagram is it just shows, it's not perfect, but it shows the difference of how we move along the continuum, right? So in reality, we see everybody's looking at the field in different angles and views, and some have betters than others. If we do equality, everyone still isn't going to be able to see the field the same. So equity simply says, you know what, how am I going to make sure that everybody is able to reach and achieve at the same level? And when we think about it, a friend of mine is like, I want liberation though. I want us all to just be able to walk on the field and storm it. And so that's the difference when we take those barriers down. But this is just a visual of what that means. And that visual also says something that it shows us that it makes it hard because of social norms that tells us, you know what? No. We have to better more, right? And you all talked about it. How do we begin to value change and ingenuity and honesty and creativity and focus on the whole person rather than saying, you know what? It's okay. We've always done this like this. We got to keep going. How do we not expect perfection? And how do we not reward it? Right? A lot of the anxiety and depression kids are having is from the expectation to be perfect, that they have to show up and they have to get to this outcome and the rigid thinking, I'm all in or I'm all out. The number one thing that kids say that they are missing from adults in their lives is validation. And that's across the board. It doesn't matter what race, ethnicity, gender, what group the kid is a part of. They say the number one thing that's missing in their life from adults is validation. And so how do we get to the point that we can say, I tell anyone, when we lean in and we talk with kids, we can say, instead of saying, yeah, but have you considered this and this? Can we begin to say yes and? Because every time you say but, you negate what came before it. Can we say, yes, and have you considered this? Because now I'm adding on to how you feel versus subtracting from it. So even how do we begin to do those little shifts in languaging so that we're helping people understand there is room for you and I hear you and I see you, even though it's different, but I hear you and I see you. And so one of the things that is really important is I tell anyone, for some kids and for some families, they don't even know, have never had the opportunity to know what it means to even be in survival mode. because of what they're experiencing, where they're coming from. They only know what it means to struggle. And if we think about this from the standpoint as the effects of what we've seen from COVID and the impact of COVID-19 on communities, kids coming from communities disproportionately affected are going to come back to you. Teachers are going to come back to you almost still in crisis mode. The one thing I'm hearing from everybody in my circle is like, I'm still tired. It doesn't feel like I got a summer vacation. I'm exhausted. You want me to do lesson plans? A friend of mine was like, my executive, Courtney, it takes me 2 hours to do what would have taken me 30 minutes. I think I'm still tired. And I was like, no, you're struggling. You're exhausted. Right? And how do we begin to recognize that everyone's at different places on this continuum? And so how do we not expect them to do things that people can do in thriving mode when they're in crisis? You know, how do we begin to moderate and shrink and really begin to think about, oh, I need to, if I'm really going to think about addressing issues of equity, issues of inequality, then we need to think about how do we moderate? How do we begin to ask something different of people, recognizing that the resources people are coming with are different? Everybody's resources are different right now, and some are even more disproportionately impacted. And so if you look on the diagram, you'll see, and you think back to the diagram with the boxes. When we get to the place that we're actually achieving equity, some would say it appears that some people's boxes were taken away from them so other people could get brought up. And I say that to say is because the hard part about shifting the lens toward equity and for all of us is that it's going to require change. And you know what? We can't accept change because sometimes we don't want to let go the piece of ourselves that we have to give up because the situation has changed. There's a part of us that we're like, I want to hold on to this. You know, I even think about as we begin to hear cries for what school needs to look like, how we need to address things. Everybody's like, no, go back to what felt good and comfortable for me. I don't want to think about something new. I don't want to change. I don't want to do that because that requires me to let go of a piece of myself that I'm not ready to. And so one of the hard things about having these conversations and leaning into them is because it is going to require all of us to lean in and to let go ways of being, thoughts, identities to change so that we can go in a different direction and transition to something new. So I want you all to ponder this question. And I just want you to think about it in your own communities. And as you think about it in your school community and in your families, and I'm going to put you all in groups and let you actually talk about this for a little while, for about 3 minutes. I just want you to think about, is there a shared understanding of equity in your community, in your school, in your family? And what makes discussing it or moving toward it scary for others? So I'm going to, and I think I can I put people in groups or Ellie, will you have to?
I think, are you co-host?
I am, but it won't let me do it. Oh, here we go. I got it. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, everyone. I will see you all back in about 3 minutes. All right.
Courtney, it looks like time is up. Do you want to bring people back?
Yep. Oh, I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see, but you can. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I can do it now.
Thank you. Oh, they're gonna close. Okay, you closed them in 50 seconds. Great. Thank you. All righty. Welcome back, everyone. It's good to have you all. And so I just hope you all had that conversation, because one of the things is really important. And the reason I had you all go into groups and do that is when you're trying to lead or guide a group into a particular direction, it's very important to make sure we're all using the same language and we know what it means to us as a group. And so if you're leading initiatives or you're having your school go through anything or you're talking about it, please make sure everyone knows we're using this language. What does it mean? When we say equity, when we say social justice, when we say these words, what does it mean for us? And how will we know what it looks like when we've achieved it, right? And so it's really important, definition and vision. And those are the places where you start when you're trying to move a group toward doing things. And so one of the things I want to do with you all now is just walk you through a visualization exercise. So I want you all to take a moment, and I just want you to breathe and just close your eyes and remind you, when you do this visualization exercise, everyone, no judgment. So don't judge what thoughts come to mind at all. We have no fixed ideas about where we're going on this journey, and don't compare it to anybody else. So just take a moment, and I want you all to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. I want you to think about when you were a senior in high school. So go back to your senior year in high school. And I want you to find a moment where you felt you were included. You felt you were a part of something. Your senior year in high school. How did it make you feel? I want you to allow those feelings to come. What did it mean to you? What did it do for you? Was there anybody with you? What made you feel included your senior year of high school? And now, in contrast, I want you to think of a moment also in your senior year where you felt excluded. What did that feel like? How did it happen? Was there anyone present? What were you hoping someone would do differently? So now, as you all come out of that, I'm going to show you a list. I asked a couple of people to say, you know what, tell me what was inclusive And exclusive when you had your school experiences. Inclusive, everybody was like, I was validated. Somebody saw me, they appreciated me, they loved on me, they were cheering me. It felt good. Some people says I was called by my name, that just having their name called was an inclusive experience for them. And for some, they said having my name called the right way. Somebody pronounced it right. And when they didn't, they leaned in and said, how do I pronounce your name? And that was a moment for them that they felt included. You know, they said feeling connected to a community, having a positive adult connection. You know, one of the things that's really important for kids is to be able to say, on your hand, tell me your 5 adults that you can go to. What's your top 5, your fab 5? Who's supporting you? And when we can narrow that down and say, who are your top 5 in school? Who are the 5 people at this school that you feel you can trust, that see you, that know you, and that you can go to for support and help? Who are your 5? And if they don't have 5, saying, you know what, we're going to help you find, we're going to figure out how to get you 5 people. Because having that positive adult connection keeps them coming to school, keeps you aware of what's going on in the home, and it's important. Another inclusive thing, someone said, somebody shared my worldview. That was amazing. Regardless of what it was, somebody shared it. Exclusive, people were like, when I was judged harshly. You know, for me, I think about, I did this one English paper wrong and I'm in AP English and my English teacher was like, you'll never be able to write. I'm like, wait, I'm a senior in AP English. How is one bad paper going to keep me from being able to write? Right, but just having that harsh judgment was really hard. You know, when they were denied, their status of difference was highlighted in a negative way, denied to being part of a group. You know, some people say, you know what, what's really hard for them is, you know what, I wanted to dress better. I wanted to have better hygiene. I just don't have water at home. And so what did that mean? You know, one of the main things is provoking shame. There are a lot of kids that are hesitant and scared and about coming back to school because they're like, I don't know how people are going to perceive me anymore. That's a lot of the anxiety. Is a group going to accept me? I've experienced so much loss. I've been keeping my family together. What does that mean? Right? So what I want to do now is I just want to show you, and this is to be thought-provoking today, some images and quotes. And I want you to just, I'm going to show them and read them because I believe in doing 2 things for different learners. And I want everyone to think about, as I'm going through them, which ones stand out for you and which ones are you like, man, I've never thought about that. And which ones challenge you? It's like, whoa, that's a new way of being, a new way of thinking for me. So the first one says, being poor now just leads to being more poor later. Can't pay to clean your teeth? Next year, pay for a root canal. Can't pay for a new mattress? Next year, pay for back surgery. Can't pay to get that lump checked out? Next year, pay for stage 3 cancer. Poverty charges interest. The next one says, when you debate a person about something that affects them more than it affects you, remember it will take a greater emotional toll on them than you. For it may feel like an academic exercise. For them, it feels like revealing their pain only to have you dismiss their experience and sometimes their humanity. The fact that you might remain calm under these circumstances is a consequence of your privilege, not increased objectivity on your part. Stay humble. The next one is, accountability can feel like an attack when you're not ready to acknowledge how your behavior harms others. Accountability can feel like an attack when you're not ready to acknowledge how your behavior can harm others. In order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it and not how you imagine their experience to be. If you've never had a Supreme Court case, Decide if you have the same rights as others. You have privilege. Choosing not to care about politics is a privilege. It means that politics does not affect your life enough to make you care. To marginalized people, politics is a matter of life and death. All right, so tell me your responses or thoughts to the quotes. Tara said there was a lot of truth there. Uncomfortable truths, right?
Well, yeah, I think the slides were very powerful, and you know, I think that sometimes um, statements, when they have an emotional impact, maybe make you uncomfortable. That's when we should be listening the most and paying attention and kind of asking ourselves questions like, why did that statement or why did that comment or whatever make me feel uncomfortable? Because that's when the greatest growth and learning, in mind shift can occur.
And it's interesting you say that. I have a client that actually said to me one day when I was a newly minted social worker, I only think you can hold my joy. I don't know if you can hold my pain and my anger. And I said, what do you mean? Because the way I express it, you might not be, you might think I'm trying to attack you. And I was like, no, let me have it. And I got it. The words, the colorful language, I got all of it. But it's really interesting that to hear, I can only, and for me, I had to sit with what about me makes it that I only want to hold someone's joy or their sadness, but I can't hold the anger and the pain and the intense emotions. And so sometimes we have to ask ourselves, right? What about us might make it difficult for us to hold it all? And I tell anyone, the thing that I tell everyone, and we probably have all recognized this at some point, but William Bridges says it this way, you know what? If we don't transition into new ways of being, we just rearrange the furniture. We don't change the atmosphere, nothing shifts. It doesn't take. We start something and we're back at the same place we were last year because we just decided to rearrange the furniture. We didn't allow ourselves to transition into something new. And part of the reason we do that, and this is what comes in, and we just talked about, is this idea that in order for me to transition, I got to get outside my comfort zone to grow. You mean I got to push past fear? Wait. I want to grow, but I don't want to push past comfort and fear. Why can't they happen simultaneously? But they don't. And so we have to recognize that if we're going to grow, if we're even going to think about addressing equity issues, that we're going to have to be uncomfortable. It's going to be scary. We have to acknowledge that we're in a position of a learner, that there's always something we can learn, and then we grow. But if we don't do that, we're just going to rearrange the furniture for a little while. And so it's really important that we begin to think about that. And one of the things that I'm showing to you is Professor Kennedy. He actually published something. He's like, wait, now let me make you think about the comfort zone diagram in terms of becoming anti-racist. Because he says we're all on this journey to become anti-racist. We're not, nobody's arrived. We're all on the journey. And I say we're all on the journey to become anti-ism, whatever it is. We've all had something that we've learned that we need to work on reshaping, recrafting, whether it's how I talk about something. My niece corrected me on something. I was like, oh, thank you. So just, we all have something that we can learn. And so the way we do it, again, he says is, you know what? We got to get past our fear. I can't avoid being uncomfortable. And we have to acknowledge I got something to learn. And the bigger thing for me is I don't let my mistakes keep me from learning. Because the hard thing is, I think for anybody, like I think about a little kid, they put their toe in the water and it's cold and they're like, get me up, get me out of here. I don't want to touch this cold water no more. And then when we're trying to get them to enjoy the beach, we make them go in a little bit more. We're like, no, we're gonna put your whole body in, and their little legs are just kicking. You know, you see little babies that you're trying to put them in the water. But we don't let that stop us from keep going in the direction of we want you to be able to enjoy the beach. And so even when we experience discomfort and it's uncomfortable and there might be some rejection and we might get it wrong, how do we continue to lean in and to encourage that, right? To begin to encourage that in each other and all ourselves is like, look, I'm gonna have moments that my impact versus my intention is gonna be different. And it's okay for that to happen. And so one of the things that I tell anybody that Robin DiAngelo coined the term white fragility. She's like, it can be a barrier and it gets in the way. She's like, it gets in the way because you know what? If somebody says something that's racist or you say, wait, they're calling me racist. I can't believe this. I get angry. I'm offensive. I got to defend myself. And you know what? I tell myself and I tell my clients, I tell my kids, I tell the people I work with, my community, I'm like, look, we're all on the journey in a spectrum. We can all do behaviors that can be exhibited as racist. We can do behaviors, have something that is considered sexist. We can all do things that can be considered marginalizing someone else. And we just have to recognize that they're not saying that this is who I am. They're saying that this is what I'm doing. And if I don't want to be defined by that, let me think about like, wait a minute. Okay, I just did that, but how can I do something different? Because I never want people to think that that's who the core of who I am, right? And also one of the things that is important is intentions and impact. They're both important. And we can't tell somebody, yeah, get over the impact of it and just honor my intentions. We gotta hold both, right? And I think the other thing that becomes easy when we think about this work with equity is to say, you know what, we'll get to this after we get to determining how much we're going to space kids apart in a building, where I'm going to put, we'll come back to this conversation after I figure out all the safety stuff, right? But not recognizing that in the planning of the safety stuff, we also need to think about equity issues. I was just reading and listening on the news the other day. There was a school that said, you know what, we're going to base, you know, who has to wear a mask or how many cases are in that school's community instead of doing something district-wide. Well, there's only one school that doesn't have to wear a mask. Can y'all imagine the income level of that school? It's pretty high. And so even in doing that, you all forgot about equity. So now you have all your kids that are in your zip codes that don't have high incomes are the ones that are having to wear masks, but the ones that the ones that have privilege don't have to do it, right? And so what does that say, right? Because we threw that aside and we're not going to even think about equity as we're thinking about entering and returning to school, right? And the other thing is if we think about trying to get to equity takes time, it's slow. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. So how do we commit and how do we begin to recognize that small changes are as important as big ones? If we can get language shift, yes. If we can get acknowledgements of small progress and understand it's going to take time and it is exacerbating, right? So let's not walk away from the conversation because we're tired and it's exacerbating. Let's not be defensive. Let's not feel the need to exert power, right? Even though you don't understand, the one thing when I tell anyone, even with little kid, whenever anyone gets uncomfortable, we look for what we can control and we exert it. And so how can we be comfortable just being free and flowing, right? And let's not get anxious. I tell anyone, let's not be anxious about this. It's hard, but let's not be anxious. And so what you'll see is some diagrams that just talks about, okay, here's when white fragility shows up. And it's just some shame, some fear, some discomfort. But here's when we weaponize it, right? When we're telling people, what you experience isn't real. That's all in your head. I don't even want to look at this right now. I don't have time for it, right? And so these are just ways that it can show up. But there are also ways that allyship shows up. And people and I love when allyship can show up in the room, right? And we want to shift to some people's like, let's not be performative, but you want to make sure that it's authentic allyship. I'm here. It's not about me, it's you. I'm not centering myself. I'm sitting with my discomfort. I have grief and outrage just like you. And it's not just examining privilege, it's, talking about, what, how can I use it to help someone else? Even in for me, I think about, what, how can I use where I'm at, my education, my cisgenderness, my able-bodiedness to help someone else? And I use this simple example. I was in the airport and there was a gentleman who had his arm in a cast and he was trying to travel with 1 or 2 kids. He having a heart, and they made him take his cast off to go through the conveyor belt. I'm 4 or 5 people behind, and he's trying to get that cast on when he comes out of the belt. Now you can only imagine having a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old running around. They are no help to getting this cast back on his arm that's holding it, his shoulder pain. Nobody offered to help. Everyone breezed through. Nobody offered to help. When I came through and I was like, I'll help you. And I took the bags to the side and I went over and I helped him put it back in the arm. And he just looked at me with tears and was like, thank you. Right? So even thinking about how do we even offer ourselves and say, you know what, I have the privilege that I can just go through, but how am I showing up differently? How am I using who I am to show up differently? And that's important. And that's when you become an authentic ally, like I'm showing up and I'm helping you out. So I want to play this video because Bettina Love is an amazing author and she talks about, you know what, I want y'all to shift from ally to being a co-conspirator. And she really has a really good discussion about it. So we're going to play it. Uh-oh. So I'm going to have to escape and let's see if it shows up here. Here we go.
You talk about, you make the move from allyship to co-conspiratorship. So the question I want you to sit with is, can you identify, once Dr. Love gives us a definition, can you identify a co-conspirator that you've had in your work? And can you break down for us this difference between an ally and a co-conspirator?
Yeah, so
I bet you can.
So the book is about like this idea of abolitionist teaching, right? And so shout out to upstate New York. I'm from upstate New York. We don't like New Yorkers, but that's okay. When you from upstate New York, like where you from? I'm from upstate. Queens? No. Brooklyn? No. Albany? No. I'm from upstate New York, Rochester, New York, 90 miles from Canada, right? And so, so we had abolitionists in upstate New York. That's where I grew up. And the one thing about an abolitionist had to be a co-conspirator. I mean, I want y'all for a second to just think about the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad freed over 100,000 enslaved Africans and Black folks. Right? Think about this. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. This was all off trust and love of each other. And to say that this system of racism and bondage, no more.
Yeah.
We did that. It was everyday people. Farmers, bankers, doctors, teachers, nurses, all ethnicities. We did that as a country. Someone came to your door, gave you a code, you just had to trust them. And so I wanted to bring that back. What would it mean for us in 2019 to think about what it would mean to be an abolitionist and to be a co-conspirator? And in the book, I use James Tyson. Now, many people are not familiar with who James Tyson is. You know Bree Newsom. Bree Newsom was the young Black woman who took that Confederate flag down in South Carolina 8 days after Dylann Roof went into the AME church. And I tell the story in the book because I think this is an important story because Bree Newsom and James Tyson did not know each other. There were some folks who got together and said, that flag is coming down. They said, and a Black woman is going to take it down. They taught Bree how to climb. They had Bree's bail money ready. And that morning, Bree Newsom and James Tyson were at an IHOP. They got the word, come take the flag down. Bree Newsom climbs up on the pole to take the flag down. Now, this is where the difference between an ally and a co-conspirator is. James Tyson, now there's a gate for the flagpole. James Tyson isn't standing like outside the gate. Okay, like Bree, they coming, Bree. Like Bree. No, James Tyson, he is inside. And then the police say, you know what? We can get her down. Tase the pole. James Tyson, because he wasn't here, he was here, said, okay. He put his hand on the pole. That white man at that moment understood why he was there. He put his hand on the pole and he knew that the police would not tase that pole with a white man, healthy white man, right there. He saved her life. That's what it means to be an ally. You can stand out there, and allies know all the language. They read all the books. They come to the meeting with all the terms. Right? They read the report before you read the report. Right? I always say allies make black folks feel bad. Like, did you read the new Ta-Nehisi Coates book? I didn't read the new Ta-Nehisi Coates book. Like, you know, I've been busy being black. I didn't read the new Ta-Nehisi Coates book, but I know it's fire. Right? So they come and they know everything and they good. And then after the meeting, you like, well, what we gonna do? They go, you like, hey, they left already? Where they go? I'm gonna call it right? So that's the difference between being an ally and a co-conspirator. You know, and this is that back to that abolitionist, is to put something on the line with somebody. Yeah. Take a risk to see how to use your whiteness. And I tell folks all the time, whiteness is like a bank. And it just, your ATM card just replenishes itself. So spend it. As the kids say, cash out. Right? Cash out. It's gonna come right back. And so to be a co-conspirator, I try to write in the book, is to take risks for somebody, to put something on the line, but to use it in a way in which when you're using your privilege. Yes. Use it. And I'm not just talking about white folks, I'm talking about cisgender folks. Use it for trans folks, like use it for queer folks. Like, put something on the line, take a risk. It doesn't have to be a small risk, big risk. James Tyson simply said here, put his hand on the pole. That's it. And that's what we are talking about with co-conspirators. Allies, they know everything, they can say, they can talk it. But when it's time, they're not there. And if they're there, they're looking at you like, you going? Oh, you going. You go on the front lines, right? Black folks and brown folks, we don't want to fight racism. The Creator did not put me here to fight racism. Yeah. If you believe that, that's racist. I should be here and be in my full life and be my full self and my full human. Yes. But I gotta fight.
All right. Any thoughts about the video as I'm jumping back to the presentation? Any thoughts? How many of you all had heard about being a co-conspirator before? I see one hand. Ellie says she's heard it, yes. And so one of the things, I'm going to place you all in groups again. And the reason I'm placing you all in groups this time is I want you to take a small moment. And I want you to actually think about, and this time we're going to leave you in a little bit longer, so disregard the timer. And I want you to think about what are 1 or 2 small steps you can take toward your job that's going to help you identify equitable practices. And I want you to do that. And one of the things that's important, and I think most of you all are here because you actually can answer these questions. You can say, do I believe this is my work? You are here because you're like, yes. But you know what? If you ask a group of people, some people are going to say, I don't know if this is my work. Can we give this to a committee? instead of owning and saying, this is a part of all our work. You know, do the goals go deep enough? What are the barriers? The one thing I tell anybody is, can you think about, how do I stack the deck in my favor? Who do I need to make sure I got on board? You know, how can I help my teammates meet their goals? And just the bigger question is, am I prepared to make myself uncomfortable to meet my goals? You know, I tell everybody, I think about this. Like, I was like, you know what? I really, you know, my mama really needs some help at home, and I really, you know, really want her house redone. But then I had to ask myself, am I ready to go clean out the house? How am I willing to show up different so that that need gets met? Am I ready to be uncomfortable for it? Am I just somebody that's just going to have a dream and wish for it? Right? So, how do we actually do that? So, I'm going to place you in your groups again, in different groups this time. But like I said, I'll let you be in them for about 5 to 10 minutes. And we'll go from there. All right, everybody, welcome back. I pulled you all back a little bit early because I didn't realize what time it was. So we're going to try to get through the rest of this so we can end on time. Are there any thoughts about what stood out for you all when you were sharing in your rooms? Any thoughts? Would love to hear them or even drop them in the chat. Anything that stood out?
Courtney, I really appreciated the definition between being an ally and a co-conspirator. I really appreciated that video, but I also appreciated just like, holy cow, like I could do more, I could be more, I could give more, I could show up more. And I think that's gonna be my really real goal this coming school year, and just make sure that I'm really in it and doing the best I can to support my students and my staff, my fellow staff members as best as I can. And even if it means that I'm uncomfortable.
Others?
Tara, I agree 100% with what you just said. I thought too, something that was really powerful is at the end, they talk about it is not the non-whites' responsibility to educate all of, it shouldn't fall on us as non-white, identifying as non-white, but it really is a community effort, and to define what we can do differently and to even have those conversations or start having the conversation between those two words and defining them would really get us closer to action. And not just, wish, but more like moving forward to really take action in helping all of us engage in these very difficult conversations and put them to practice. So thank you for sharing that video. It was really powerful. I look forward to seeing it multiple times too. Sure, I'll get much more out of it when I see it for the second or third time.
Thank you. Others? All right. Well, I think the next thing I just wanted to share with you all is that, and give you all a preview, is that next tomorrow, we will be doing another session, and the session tomorrow will specifically be looking at how do you use data that you have access to actually think about how you could address equity within your system. And so it'll be walked through, some of it will be tangible exercises that you can do where you'll actually walk through, like now that we've talked about what it is, what we need to do, how to do it, and even how do you use the data to set goals? How do you use the data to begin to lean in and to say, you know what, how can I use it to help get buy-in for the direction I need to go? Because not everyone is just gonna trust you or trust the feelings, and some people might need something tangible to hold on to. So the session tomorrow is going to talk about that. And so it's really important that we do that. In the chat, you will see an evaluation for today's session. You'll also see our homepage for things to, for when we're offering other things as a part of the Thriving Mind series. And I just want to pause for a minute and see if there are any other questions or any other comments before I let you all go, and understand that today is a new day to do something different. Each day poses an opportunity for us to say, you know what, how can I show up different? How can I be better? What can I do differently? And so if there are any questions, please ask them. If not, I'm going to let you all go and I'll stop sharing. Yes. So any questions? All right.
I just wanted to say thank you, Courtney, for your wonderful display today. I learned so much and I was really grateful to be here and a part of it.
Thank you for coming. Thank you all. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Try not to be tired. Do one thing to fill your bucket a day. It could be, I'm going to go an hour without looking at my phone. It could be just going outside and breathing some fresh air. And so enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you all at our next sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.